Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show. This is episode 504. We've got a great special guest. He's been on the show before. It was a blast, so we thought we would ask him back. And that's Josh Pollock. And he was formerly of Caldera Forms, but I'm going to let him introduce himself quickly. So, Josh, can you introduce yourself quickly to the listeners and viewers?
Hi. Thanks for having me on. My name is Josh Pollock. I work at a company called Saturday Drive. We make Ninja Forms, Caldera Forms, and WP, and some other cool WordPress stuff. Before that, I worked on Caldera Forms at a company called CalderaWP. I was a co-owner there, and so we were acquired by the company that had grown out of Ninja Forms about a year ago. So now it's just one big thing. And I work on the team that builds those three plugins, Ninja Forms, Caldera Forms, and WP.
Right, that sounds great. Before we go into the main part of the interview, I'd like to mention our sponsors, because without their help, we couldn't continue giving you the shows. And let's start off with Kinsta. Kinsta is a WordPress hosting company. They've been our major sponsor for over 2 years now. We've been using Kinsta to host the WP-Tonic website for over 3 years. They're a fantastic host. They only specialize in WordPress. If you're looking for yourself or for clients, a really great professional hosting company that can help you with WooCommerce, membership website, anything that needs a bit of extra oomph, I would suggest you go over to Kinsta, and you could choose a lot worse. What you get with Kinsta, you get Google Cloud. They host all their sites using Google Cloud. You get a superb custom interface. And the main thing is you get some of the best support on the market. You get support staff that really understand WordPress. I've never had inquiry escalated. The person that first answered it dealt with it. And if you're using some other hosting companies, which I won't mention, that's unusual. So if that sounds good for yourself or for your clients, go over to Kinsta, maybe buy one of their packages, and the main thing is tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic show. Our other sponsor is WP Fusion, which is a fantastic company. If you've got a CRM like ActiveCampaign, Drip, there's a lot of them on the market at the present moment, and you will really want to integrate your WordPress website with one of these CRMs, you need WP Fusion. It's a fantastic company, like Kinsta, fantastic support. And it's just an amazing product. So if you're looking for real integration with WordPress and your CRM of choice, go over to WP Fusion, have a look what they got to offer. You're going to be blown away. Right, let's go into the main part of the show, Josh. So what led to the decision to sell Caldera, to Ninja Forms? Did they just make you an offer, or did you come to a stage where you felt that you just couldn't push the company any further?
Yeah, so I mean, we being a small company with a product and no outside funding isn't easy. We did it for a while, right? I was a co-owner with Christy Chirinos, and she got a great opportunity at a time where to go and work at Liquid Web with Chris Lema on the managed WooCommerce, the Zone Nexus managed WooCommerce they're doing there. And that was like this great opportunity. I was like, yeah, you should do that. It pays better than this. It's, earn more, like work with Chris. That's great. And then it's like, okay, but what about me? What about the plugin, right? And so, because there's a lot of people using it. And I feel like a lot of them felt like it was a part-time thing, because it was, right? I was doing other things to make money and things like that. So we wanted to make sure the plugin was solid, make sure the team was getting taken care of. And like I could have run the company myself, but that sounded really boring. Like being a business owner is really hard and it's an interesting challenge. But at the end of the day, like I like writing code. So it was really about like, okay, here's where we are. there's a couple of paths, and I want to write code. I want to see this thing finished. I want to work on new things beyond just this, right? Because we had been working for a long time on trying to come out with a second product under the Caldera name or pivot to other things, because Form Builder is an okay business. We're late. We were, have a lot of more free features than we needed. And it's just kind of hard to do as a small team to do the kind of things that we wanted to do. So this was a cool opportunity to go work with who I always referred to as my favorite competitors. I like seeing these folks around at WordCamps and talking to James and Kevin about stuff there, or on, DMs and stuff. They're always really helpful to me for years. So this was just a neat opportunity. Kevin reached out, one of the founders reached out to me. I went to visit them in Tennessee, and it was just the right thing to do when things didn't feel very sustainable and weren't a good fit for me, right? Like I was kind of in this position of, well, I could do it. I could run the company, and that doesn't sound fun. So this was just a different opportunity. That's been real interesting for me.
Oh, I totally understand. I think you explained the core reasons really quite clearly there, and I can totally empathise. So what, I think it's been over a year since the takeover. Time goes quick, doesn't it? What are some of them, why do you think they were interested in buying Caldera? What did they get from the deal?
Well, it's a product. It makes money, right? That's good, right? Businesses need to make money because then they can do things like pay people. And I like that part, right? This is my first job since full-time job since no comment, right? Probably the longest one I've ever had. Yes, not working for myself. This is definitely, these 10 months is the longest job I've ever had. That's a neat thing for me. I think the company is growing, right? Diversifying beyond Ninja Forms. Ninja Forms is very successful. It makes money to pay for people and things like that. Moving Ninja Forms forward in a lot of ways is something in terms of new features, stability, working with, blocks and things like that. That stuff I've been working on is really, I really enjoy setting up testing and automation and that kind of automated quality control, which any software project can benefit from. And I'm really interested in a lot of the Gutenberg stuff, the block editor things that a plugin like Ninja Forms needs. And so, we're, Saturday Drive, the company that built Ninja Forms, is going in this year from being a relatively small, but growing, all in one city team to a distributed team. Where about half the company is in one city and half's around the world. So a bit before I got there, everybody was in Cleveland, Tennessee, in an office. There's now a co-working space, which has been shut down because of COVID, but in Cleveland, Tennessee, next to the coffee shop, but there's no office. And I think we're at the point where about half of the employees are remote. And that was my reality before all of this.
Yeah. But
this is all brand new to most of the people at the company and the leadership. So bringing in people from, the people who came from Caldera were from all over the world. I was the only person in the US that came over. So it's been a neat opportunity to look at the difference between an in-person team and a in-office team and a remote distributed team, and help that culture change.
That's really interesting. What have been some of the main lessons you've learned from that process?
This is something that I think James, the founder, CEO, said very early, is implicit versus explicit knowledge. That in a office, there can be a lot of implicit knowledge because somebody can say, hey, how do we do this? And somebody else can answer. And you kind of trust that somebody around is going to know the answer. Or who do you go to? And that's fairly quick when you're all in the same building. You say, hey, who has the answer to this? And if they tell you to walk down the hall, they tell you to walk down the hall. But it's still quick. It's still immediate. And in a remote distributed business, right, I pretty much always developed Caldera forms with somebody who's in Western Europe or South Africa. So I'm really used to, and I'm East Coast US, so I'm really used to working with people who might do most of their work while I'm not at work. So if I don't make it really explicit what I want, they can't do their job. If I don't make the procedures, the things that they need to do it the right way to do the, to have access, right? If the Stripe API keys aren't handy, if they have to DM me and ask for Stripe API keys and it's 4 in the morning where I live, I'm not responding. They're just gonna have to wait till 10 a.m. So that kind of stuff, that's explicit knowledge that I think any distributed remote business needs to have, because it allows people to work independently. And that's really what the key to remote work is knowing that people can work independently the right way.
I think you pointed out something, because my team that helps me with WP Fusion, it's all distributed, but it's a blended. I have 2 people based in the US that help me, and I have about 3 to 4 people that are outside the US. So we're a blended company. And I use that term that we got some US people and we got some offshore, but it's all distributed. But I think what you've just explained, you've done a fantastic job there, actually, because that is the crux of the difference. If you ever worked in an office environment and then worked as a distributed group, that's the main difference, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as the Stripe API keys. One of the first things we were working on when we started, after the transition, was Stripe updates for Ninja forms and Caldera forms, because of whatever the regulation in EU that was changing, and they changed their APIs to support it, and we needed to change our plugins, our integrations. And I didn't have Stripe API keys. And I brought this up and it was a whole new thing. And it turned out previously in the office, it was just, I don't know, somebody had them. Everybody kind of had one, and wherever they were written down somewhere. And I was, of course, working with somebody in France, and he was gone, and I couldn't ask him for them, because it was that way past a reasonable hour of the day there. And I was in the middle of my workday. So and that's just, I think for people going remote, that's probably the reason people spend so much time on these interminable Zoom calls, is because they don't have anything written down. They're papering over.
Well, I think also technology plays a key part. A lot of people, my company, our main technology that we use is Teamwork to communicate internally with. And we've been with that for about 4 years, that platform. And I looked at a number of different platforms, and that's the one that I gelled with initially. We might be moving away from Teamwork in the next couple of weeks to a competitor, which is a massive task. I know a lot of people are using Slack. What's the technology that you use inside your company to communicate with one another?
Basecamp, which I'm super happy about. I don't have any Slack in my life, and I can't be happier with that. I think Slack is the worst tool for productivity. I think that any business going remote that wants it to go poorly should use Slack, because it'll just distract everybody, and it's a bad way to communicate about work. I think that chat and text, I love chat and text. I use Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, all that to talk with my friends, and group texts. Like, I'm way better on writing than speaking. I love it. But for business, I think the only problem with Basecamp is it has a chat function. The good thing about Basecamp chat function is it's not very good, and you can turn it off for the most part, besides the DMs. But if they could get rid of that, it would be an almost perfect piece of software. It's really focused on isolating projects. You can add people and remove people. Everything's searchable very well. It loads real fast. The mobile app is great. And it makes sense that the company Basecamp would put out a project management software that feels humane, right? Like most project management systems are designed around putting humans into units of work, right? It's that whole human resources thing. Like you have 8 hours of human and you should be able to do these tasks in this so that you can measure how many tasks per human unit. And I really like that Basecamp seems to be built around communicating in a productive way.
We have to discuss that. Keep that in mind, what you just said, because that's an interesting statement you just made. But we're going to go for our break, Josh. But we'll be back in a few moments with Josh Pollock. We've had a fascinating conversation already. Josh is a really interesting guy. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. We've got Josh Pollock, well known in the WordPress community. We've had already, I think, interesting. So you made that point before our break about it's humane and it's about communication. Can you expand a little bit what you meant with that last statement?
Well, I think that, right, so we also use Basecamp ShapeUp project management system. So they have a piece of software called Basecamp. They also have a book called ShapeUp, which explains how they do project work. And we're using a form of it. And I think anybody should read this book. It's online, it's free, it's short. I really recommend it.
All right.
But it sets up, for time-based work in a way that makes sense. And I think that, I think my major gripe with the software, making software at scale, is generally that we tend to reduce work to tasks that get done. And then we can kind of measure them based on if they get done or not and how many hours they take and points and things like that. And this really doesn't make sense to how humans do creative work. So I like that Basecamp does things like draw progress on a hill, right? Because that's kind of how humans do work. Like we struggle to figure it out and then it comes together and we come down the other side. So it's a really neat way to track progress visually. And it just avoids like Asana has this really endless to-do list type stuff, which I used to believe in very much. I was like, oh, if I can get timelines for everything and then I'll have a calendar view and then, oh, look, and it's all just magic, right? It's magical thinking. And I just have found that of all the project management systems, and like, I don't know, we should promote a product that I work on, not pay for. But, I just really think that getting away from Slack, getting away from real time, that it only sort of yelling type communication is Slack, has really, really made my life better. I don't miss it.
So looking, I suppose have you worked in kind of office environments yourself then? Or have you always been a semi or full remote?
Yeah. I mean, before in the last kind of year of Caldera, we had an office that I would occasionally go to, at a co-working space. And, at one point there was 3 of us there out of 7. Yeah, I used to work in the music industry, so that was more in person, but not offices. I can't imagine going to work in an office. It sounds boring.
So I can't really ask you, to compare working in an office and working as a remote, because you've always been pretty remote, haven't you? So we won't delve there because you can't compare. So let's move the conversation on to a different area there. But I think what we've discussed around, the software and remote teams has been quite fascinating, actually. I was surprised we went down that road, actually, but I think with your help, we've come up with some great stuff there. Thank you for that. And let's talk about WordPress and UX design, because I was interested because you've been in, because you were also involved, I might be totally wrong here, but weren't you involved in pods quite a bit as well?
Yeah, I mean, that was my first WordPress job. I worked there starting in support, and eventually it was like community manager slash junior developer. Where I built, started fixing bugs there. It's kind of where I learned to write code for the most part. Like I'm one of those people who, searched how to do whatever with WordPress, and the answer was paste some code into functions.php and hope for the best.
We've all been there.
Yeah,
I'm
so
not an active coder now. I manage my business. I chose. That's why I could relate to what you said about your decision to, to
right.
sell your company, because I had to make, and I wasn't a fantastic coder. I was probably better than I thought, but I'm quite critical of my own work. I find it much easier to manage other people than myself, to be truthful about it. So let's go on to a subject that I've been thinking a lot about, and I'd like to get your thoughts about it. And that's UX design. And I think in some ways, we've got Gutenberg, and that seems to be growing. I'm not going to ask you to remark about my own views, because through my roundtable show, I've been reasonably critical of the whole process. But that's watered down the river, really. So I don't want to drench all that back up. But I think in a lot of ways, WordPress is facing a kind of UX challenge now. It feels a bit clunky in a lot of ways when it comes to UX design. First of all, would you agree with that? And where do you think it needs to go to rectify that?
Oh, I mean, I haven't really used it in a while. I kind of lost interest in WordPress a long time ago, and
It's a fascinating statement, actually.
well, I don't use it, right? I use it to test plugins, right?
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Yeah.
So that's I occasionally, right? I don't manage any of our WordPress sites, but I'll upload the new version of a plugin or whatever. Yeah. But that's kind of my experience of WordPress. I think that and I've always had this because I did a little bit of site development back in the day, but it was always like, hey, we need WooCommerce to do this thing it doesn't do, or we need some custom API work or integrate with some other service. So, and I think that Caldera forms, and for me, I know it was intentional choice, and I believe in Ninja forms to be a very different UX, because the older UX pattern just really didn't work very well for anything application-y. And I think that I really like Gutenberg, right? Because I think the problem with WordPress previously was that the WordPress post editors let you do anything in it. You could just make text red for no reason. And this is more of an object-oriented, structured way of making content, which is more manageable, makes more sense. It's closer to what you see is what you get. I know a year and a half ago, I did I'm going to write a bunch of stuff in, however many posts in Gutenberg to get a better opinion. And I really like it. I'm just the kind of nerd who would rather write in Markdown, to be honest. But I think that, in one of the sort of side projects I'm working at looking at ways of using some of the blocks, for the more complicated stuff instead of building my own thing, for the galleries and the lists and the YouTube embeds, that kind of stuff. I think it's a step in the right direction. I just don't know enough about what people do with the WordPress editor to have an opinion on if it's helpful or hurtful, or if it's a step in the right direction or not. I think that having a system that's well done, right? I think on a code level, it's very well done. It's a lot more extensible than the old system, and it's built with the idea that things can change in mind. Right? There's a lot of things in WordPress that are really hard to change, where people are like, That's not great, but there's not a lot we can do about it. And I think that the
Yeah,
WordPress
my
REST
cre- my
editor was a big jump to like
yeah.
make it possible to make
I
different
agree
growth.
with you. I actually agree with you that, you know, obviously something needed to be done with the editor experience. And I feel Gutenberg, you know, it seems to be coming on. I don't use it that much because I decided at an early stage to use Elementor as my page editor kind of page builder. Um, and our company decided to go down that road. But I think Gutenberg seems to be coming on. I was talking more about, you know, kind of like stuff ends up in these settings, stuff can end up in appearance, stuff can end up in tools.
Yeah.
Stuff can end up anywhere, can't it? You know, and it's fine if you know what a post is and the difference between a post and a page, and you know that stuff can end up, you know, in 4 or 5 different places, can't it? But if you don't, it's a little bit of a hot mess, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, look, I live in a pretty old house, and I make these jokes about when they were laying down the boards on like for the floor, like this hardwood floor that's a mess. There must have been one guy who was a young guy who was like 100 years ago thinking like, what if we measured all the boards first and like figured out the optimal layouts, that way we wouldn't have a board that's this long next to a board that's this long and a board that's this color versus, and then everybody's like, shut up, just put them in the right way. That's how we've always done it, right? And now you go into houses and they have these perfect manufactured floors that look perfect. And it's kind of a timeless way of building that you just kind of build organically and you add on as you go, right? And I'm using the timeless way of building as a Christopher Alexander book on architecture, organic architecture. And it's just kind of how things have been built. And I think the nature of open source is you make things possible, right? And the tension there, and then the nerds like me come along and go, yeah, I'm gonna put it there. And then some other nerd goes, oh, I'm gonna put it over there. And right, because we can, and we all have opinions. And I think that that's really beautiful in a lot of ways. And it's very organic, and it's the way that things have always been done. That said, like, people are really happy with slick, consistent, easy to use platforms that are closed, that don't have this weirdness to them, right? And I think at the end of the day, that's what you're choosing on. You're choosing the difference between, I can do a set number of things that are determined by someone, and everything should work and everything should be integrated and everything should be all in one, or I'm going to choose to assemble my own thing from other people's pieces, you know, the WordPress solution. And it's going to be a bit of a mess. And I think that that's a trade-off. And I'm excited by a lot of, you know, companies are now, hosting companies, some of them, you know, most of them are just offering the WordPress. But when they get into, you know, e-commerce hosting, or I think Elementor has their own hosting now, where, not Elementor, Divi, sorry, maybe both. But where it's optimized for that thing, right? And everything's put together the right way. And I think the WordPress ecosystem and, you know, the Gutenbergizing of everything is an opportunity to do this. Consumers need something consistent. I don't know how to get there on a platform level, but Gutenberg might be the way for everybody to say, okay, we're going to build it out of the same pieces. We're going to put it in the same places. And we're going to make it easier, because we're all using the standard APIs, for hosts to move things around, for plugins to move things around. So I hope it'll be less fragmented as a result. I don't know.
No, I think that was really fascinating the way you just put that again. You're making me think. Which thanks for that. We're coming to the end of the podcast show. Hopefully Josh can stay on for another 10, 15 minutes. And there's some other questions which you'll be able to see on the WP-Tonic website and also the YouTube channel, the whole interview. We call this extra material our bonus content. So Josh, like I say, we're wrapping up the podcast part of the show. What's the best way to find out more about yourself and your thoughts and what you're up to?
Okay, so again, I'm Josh Pollock. You can find me at joshpress.net or Josh412 on Twitter. And then Ninja Forms is ninjaforms.com. Caldera Forms is calderaforms.com. And they're both free on WordPress.org. So if you go into your WordPress in the plugin screen and type Ninja Forms, you'll get Ninja Forms. You can try it out and then learn about some of our cool add-ons.
That's great. And like I say, beloved audience, on the 7th of July, that's Tuesday the 7th of July at 9 a.m, me and Spencer Forum are having another free webinar where we're going to be showing you how to build modern shopping cart flows, basically using Spencer's own product and WooCommerce, how you can build actual shopping cart experiences that are better than Shopify and really delight your clientele with the experience, either your customers or your clients that are asking you to build a modern shopping cart environment. We're also going to be touching how to combine that with Lifter LMS and some other leading WordPress plugins. So it's going to be a blast. Like I say, that's going to be on Tuesday the 7th of July. Tuesday the 7th at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. How you register is really easy. You go to the WP-Tonic website and right in the top navigation, there's a button saying free webinar. You just click it and you can freely register for this webinar and you'll be able to learn a lot from myself and from Spencer Forum. We'll be back next week with another great guest like Josh. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye. Right, on to the thing, because I think it's been a fascinating conversation so far, and thank you for you, because I thought that was really a fantastic metaphor you used about the difference between open source. Now, I and my company, we specialize in the building of learning management systems and courses for clients. And the two plugins that we utilize for that is Lifter LMS and LearnDash. But there's a lot of SaaS competitors. Like, just take one of them. Like one of the leading ones is Kajabi. Now, Kajabi has a lot of elements to it, but it's the way they sell it is they say that all these elements integrate flawlessly together. But the thing I was going to put to you, when you got a kind of Swiss Army knife that's doing a lot of different things, can it really compete with something that has been designed by a small team that has a kind of laser focus on a particular problem, a particular area, like your own product about forms? So can WordPress, if you can throw in the support, could it argue that it's got the best of breed, and then rather than some kind of blunt army knife?
I mean, people do, right? Like, there's a lot of people using WordPress. Like, we have jobs, I think, and careers based on it. Both of us, I think, is proof that you can, right? Is it better? I don't know, but I think that if I had to choose something that wasn't 100% correct, right? Because it's one thing when you're like, oh, this piece of software does exactly what I need. I just lost my headphones. Hold on.
That's all right.
That's real bonus content for you here. Okay, anyway. So
you got very passionate there.
I got very passionate, but like the wire. So if theoretically you get a piece of software that does everything that you need and it just works and you can afford it, sounds great. Most of the time that's not true, right?
Yeah.
Like having worked in open source for so long, I get annoyed when I'm like, oh, I'll put in a patch for that. And then I'm like, oh, you can't put in a patch for that. It's proprietary software. It's microwave, right? Or whatever, right? Like not all technology works that way. And so if you are in a situation where you have something that does 80% of what you need, then I think WordPress or something like that is generally a better solution because it's designed to let you do your own finishing, right? The thing, if you have an e-learning platform and it doesn't do everything you need, you're kind of SOL there. Whereas if Lifter does, or LearnDash does most of what you need, well, if it's got filters, it's got hooks, you can write some custom stuff, you can, a lot of times it's more complex forms. Well, Ninja forms, ACF, right? Those kind of things. And I think the fact that every business, every person is unique shows that a SaaS platform can really nail a certain niche sometimes, but they can't get everybody. And the success of WordPress shows that people find it to be worth it to take the thing that's acknowledging that it can't be everything, right? You get a WordPress plugin that's designed to, right? The economics of a WordPress plugin is if it can solve one person's problem, it's a failed business. It's got to solve hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands, potentially millions of people's problems to work because of the pricing. You get a thing that almost does what you need, you customize it. And everybody's business is unique, but a lot of them are solved, are 80% similar, 90% similar. And the fact that we have things like, Lifter LMS or WooCommerce that do 80, 90% of what most businesses need, depending on the niche, is really helpful.
Yeah, I see what I'm trying to do with my own business. We do some high custom work, but also I'm building a hosted platform where I'm trying to provide hosting that is really aimed. I did a deal with a hosting company and they modified their the hosting they're providing, WP-Tonic, so it's more suitable for a learning management system.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'm trying to provide the best software, and I did deals with individual WordPress company, plugin companies. And then we're trying to add like content. We're trying to add some themes that are specifically designed for the learning management, either Lifter, LMS or LearnDash, and then also providing some email functionality where we provide the scripts themselves, the written material. So we're trying to reduce the friction for the client to try and get something up and running. Mm-hmm. But they still have the possibility, if they get fed up with us, they can go just to another hosting and host their website. They're not entrapped by us, but they won't get the extra updates of content, but they're not entrapped. Do you think that's because I think that's what the hosting companies more like, WP Engine, Liquid Web, SiteGround, they're all looking at adding extra value, aren't they? So do you think there's just going to be increasing that different industries, you have different WordPress solutions aimed at specific niche areas?
Oh yeah, for sure. Right. And I think, so hosting is a good example, right? Of it used to be there was this managed WordPress hosting, and managed WordPress hosting was good because, and that was true. And then you start looking at, well, what kind of site, right? Because an e-learning, learning platform, you're going to have people who are logged in. And you're going to have content that changes based on who is logged in, which makes the solution for a blog performance, static caching, totally out the window, right? Because if you're serving the same pages to everybody, just cache them all. Simple. Whereas if you have a shopping cart, if you have an e-commerce platform, you have a learning platform, it's going to be different for everybody. So you have to do different things to optimize the hosting. So yeah, I think that we're seeing different flavors of WordPress. I don't want to say forks, but we're seeing digital experience platforms. And digital experience is code word for enterprise grade content management, right? And so people putting together a platform for enterprise development. There's a few of these going around now with WordPress that put together different plugins, different coding standards, and things like that to solve that. And I think that's really cool and meaningless to a consumer, right? To a general purpose, I'm going to buy $500 worth of plugins and snap some things together. And I think that's good. Like at this scale, one solution doesn't serve everybody. And we just need a lot of different flavors that can work together. So that way the enterprise people are solved, by that sort of solution without, things that are necessary and handy in enterprise are annoying at any other scale. And stupid. So like we can't, it's just a matter of having different solutions, different flavors. Because it's the platform for people who aren't served by any other platform, maybe, right? I guess is my point.
I want to move you to this, move on to another area, but I'm not sure if you're going to want to comment on it. So I'm going to try and put it to you quick, and then we can see if you don't want to comment that much about what I'm just going to say, I totally understand. There's obviously, there's been a lot of investment in Automatic, and, Matt's statement that Jetpack was the main driver of growth to me is, he says he's got statistics that show that, but Matt Medeiros of the Matt report, he says that's delusionary. The real driver of WordPress growth over the past 13 years that it's been around has been the WordPress community, and especially blue collar consultants that recommended it to small businesses as the platform to build their business on, their online business on. To me, Matt Medeiros' argument is pretty correct. So how do you see the relationship between Automatic and this whole community playing out in the next 18 months?
I mean, I agree with both of them.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I guess. I mean, I don't really have the data to back it, but
no, I haven't really either. So,
which is, what it is, right? Like, I don't work at Automatic, and I don't work at a hosting company, right? Because the hosting companies that are large enough have the usage statistics for their platform that they can then, make guesses on the whole platform, and Jetpack and Gravatar give data to Automatic that we don't have. Yeah. So I don't really know, right? Jetpack is a great plugin that does so many things that.
Oh, you think it's great? I really, I want to make it clear. I love the Jetpack people. When I meet them at WordCamps, they've always been really not the nicest people. As a plugin, I kind of semi-despise it. It's one of the things as a support company that we try and remove almost straight away. So when you say that you love it, I'm fascinated that you love it, and I kind of semi-despise it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't used it in a while. Again, I don't do WordPress, right? Besides testing plugins. I think that what's neat about Jetpack is it's one thing, one authentication, one account, and it can do a lot of things that WordPress can't, like the the advanced search, the backups, the relevant recommended posts, that kind of stuff. I love the architecture of offloading that to automatic servers, and the fact that those are features that WordPress.com as a product needed. And then instead of developing them in-house and those being the WordPress.com special sauce of like, because a lot of open source projects that have a similar model to automatic, they don't give you the whole thing in the open source version. You know,
you're making me really think, actually, Josh, because you've got a very different mindset to mine. Because that's what I don't like. I'd rather than just concentrate and make, you know, this is WordPress.com. But if you want your own, you know, to make it more clearer, but you've got a totally, that's fascinating. You've got a totally different mindset to me.
I like that they had, right, so Jetpack solved the core reason to exist, as far as I understand it, is to solve problems on for the WordPress.com product, and then make them available to the WordPress community as an option. Nobody requires it, right? You can run WordPress without it, it works fine. But these things that either didn't make sense to go in core or can't go in core because they rely on like Photon can't be a feature of core. Okay. It is not something that WordPress can do. Or the Elasticsearch stuff, right? Those are just things that it can't. And so instead of saying, well, WordPress open source version has these features, you know, and there's check, XXX at the bottom, and then WordPress, you know, .com special version does have these features. It's that WordPress.com includes Jetpack, and WordPress open source, you can use Jetpack. You don't have to. You want to use a different search plugin? Use a different search plugin. You want to use a different form plugin? Please do. Theirs is fine. Ours, you know, I think is more featureful, both of ours, and also pays my bills. So, but you can choose. And so I like the fact that forms aren't baked in, but everybody needs forms. So there's an option, WordPress.com gets it, you know, because all those users need forms. They get Jetpack, everybody else can use it, or we can choose to use our own one. So I think it's a really good way of dealing with the division between a commercial product like WordPress.com, where, remember, to answer your sort of secondary question there, Automatic raised a bunch of money. They're a business. They need, that's backed by investors. Their investors want the return on investment of a certain multiple. That's how business works. I don't begrudge them for that.
No, I don't. No, it's just, it's the kind of the mystery element of it all. But I kind of suppose that they totally know, you know, where they're going, which they probably don't, because after a certain distance, it's all kind of fantasy anyway, because, you know, the world can change in a week, can't it?
Reality, yeah. Remember when there wasn't a pandemic? Exactly. It was way better, but here we are.
So the outside world can destroy any kind of business plan that's too far out, because it's kind of, it becomes a list of hopes rather than of reality, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So where would, just to finish up, and I've really enjoyed our discussion actually, you have to come,
it's been fun.
You have to come back and not leave it so long. Basically, where do you hope your own, you know, you put a lot of work in your own form plugin, where Caldera, you know, where would you, what are you hoping for it, and where your own form product is going in the next year? What are, you know, can you discuss some of the things that you would like to be developed a bit further?
So with Ninja Forms, the next big update is new blocks. Redid the main form block just so it's, you know, it was so early, it didn't have all the right things to it, right components didn't look right. And then the views block. So you'll be able in the free Ninja Forms plugin to have blocks that show like a table of all your entries. So that's cool, and we'll be investing more in that. We're working a lot on the add-ons for both plugins. So Caldera Forms MailChimp 2.0, and we're coming out with a new version of Ninja Forms MailChimp where You you put in your API key, you select a list, and it just creates a form for you that has all the fields mapped out, right? So if you have different interest groups and different segments and different merge fields, it maps those all out. And that's the kind of thing that for both plugins, we're really looking at, like, these are good, people like them. How do we make them better? How do we make it so there's less steps to do the thing you're trying to do? How do we make it so it's harder to do it wrong, right? We get a lot of support requests where people are like, I'm trying to do this, I did this, didn't do what I was expecting. We're just like, yeah, don't do that. It's not gonna work, you need to do it. And we try and make the docs better, but we try and make the onboarding better. But the more we can do it for you, the merrier. The more we can correct for mistakes of that. For both of the form plugins, those are really taking things that are good and making them better. Taking things that are a bit great and making them even greater. Speed, performance, Caldera Forms 1.9, we rewrote a lot of the form builder. It looks almost identical. We changed like the button labels. They were confusing in some places, but it looks the same. It's just infinitely faster. Right, like the conditional logic, people love that thing. In Caldera Forms, if you put too many rules in there, it got slow. We made it not slow, which was fun. Like I wrote a ton of React code for that. And so I think for both of the form builders, we're bringing new features, things like the Ninja Forms views. We're making a lot of our popular add-ons like MailChimp. Obviously, lots of people use the MailChimp add-on for both Ninja Forms and Caldera Forms. We're really focusing on how do we make those as easy to set up, get connected to MailChimp, or whatever other service you're using, and just make the builders faster, easier. Put better, make it easier for you to see what's gone wrong when you're connecting to a service that isn't working, that kind of stuff. That's really what we're focused on.
Awesome, fantastic. It's been a pleasure talking to Josh. I think we're covered. You made me think. I'll be thinking about this interview all day, actually. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show. Hopefully you'll come back a bit sooner than last time. It's been a real pleasure. And hopefully you've enjoyed the interview itself, Josh.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we'll be back next week. Hopefully with a similar great interview like with Josh. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.
Okay.